Hi everyone, here we are at Private Cellar HQ. If you ever wondered what it looks like, it actually is a room at HQ that we very rarely use, but I'm here with Nicola to record a special video for our Women in Wine. This is an exclusive video for you all to say Happy New Year, first of all. It's the 11th of January, 2023. And we're really looking forward to a great new year ahead with Women in Wine. So looking forward to catching up with you all in person and on screen as the year goes through. But first of all, we are about to dive into Burgundy season, which is a really, really busy time in the wine calendar. Nicola has been in Beaune for 2 weeks in October, where she spent time going up and down the Côte d'Or in the Côte de Nuit, Côte de Beaune, meeting all of our winemakers, wine growers, and people who write about wine. So really getting the lowdown from everybody throughout the trade. I went to join her for a long weekend where we went on an epically long walk from Meursault to Pouligny to Chassagne. And we really got under the skin of the vintage. And because Burgundy is such a big subject and it can be a bit daunting, we thought we'd just give you a little distilled version. We're going to try and keep this to 15 minutes. It's not going to be long to watch. And we're going to cover the season, the quality of the wines, why we should buy En Primeur, and also Nicola's top tips to buy from the campaign. So Nicola, what can you tell us about the 2021 Burgundy season?
Wow. It was one of those really complicated years. There are some years which are just glorious and they say you don't need to do anything, but 2021 threw absolutely everything at the winemakers this year. So it started off with a lovely hot, unusually hot February and March, where temperatures actually went up to around 20 degrees and the vines went whoopee and started growing. Net result was when a massive cold spell came in, some polar air moved south in early April, it absolutely ravaged the vines, particularly Chardonnay, which is an early budder. And they ended up with massive losses. Some people have got losses up to sort of 85, 90%, even more. And it was defining the vintage, essentially. After that, everyone was slightly down, but they do have second buds. It can come through. Chardonnay isn't a great second budder, but if you've got a good season, it will grow and they'll have a harvest. And unfortunately, that wasn't to be. They had a really, you probably remember the summer of 2021. It wasn't exactly one to write home about. Quite a lot of rain, quite a lot of cold. It was just grey the whole time. It never really warmed up. And actually, as one of our growers put it, it wasn't a year for shorts in the vineyard, which is quite unusual. And bearing in mind they are sort of a good 300, 400 miles south of England. And it was sort of rain. They had mildew. They had two sorts of mildew. Well, I have one. They had rot. They had everything thrown at them. And extraordinarily, I went out there terrified about what I was going to taste. I thought I was going back to the bad old days of tasting green wines, harsh tannins, unripe fruit, high acid. So I went out slightly nerve-wracked, armed with my extra strength toothpaste to protect my teeth. And actually, we were really beautifully surprised because actually the wines are really good. They've got great technology in their hands now. They actually previously, dare I admit it, they would have picked everything, chucked the whole lot into vats and gone, well, yeah, that's the vintage. Now they sort it in the vineyard, they sort it when they're picking, they sort it when it comes into the cellar. And some of them are taking out a further 15% of what they had managed to salvage. So what goes into the vat is good. So I didn't taste, I was told, watch out, you'll find some. I didn't taste a single rotten wine. I didn't taste a single bitter wine. I didn't find any out of kilter tannins. And what I tasted was some really delicious wines. So I have to say, some of them are going in my cellar, provided there's some stock.
So I have to say, I really, really, really enjoyed tasting the wines. I thought the whites in particular were really energetic. They were great quality, yeah. and the reds juicy and really delicious. So on a quality basis overall, what's your sort of take on the vintage, thinking of quality and also the quantities that might be available?
So quality-wise, as Laura says, the whites are spectacular, absolutely spectacular. They will drink young, they will drink medium age, they'll drink old. They will actually make proper old bones, which is a slightly dodgy question over the previous three vintages, 18, 19, 20, where it's been really quite hot. And although the wines have got freshness, they've got acidity in those vintages, if you look at my drinking dates, they're not as long as the drinking dates I give them for 2021, because they really need that acidity. That's their backbone, that's their preservative. The reds, on the other hand, I would say are mid-term wines, but they're beautiful. They are juicy, fresh fruits. It's all about red fruits. If you manage to dig out any of our old offers on our website and you look at my 2020 or 2019 Burgundy tasting notes, It's black fruits, it's sloes, it's black currants even, which is most unlikely for tasting of Pinot Noirs. Here we are back to red fruits. We've got, the French call them coquant, they're crunchy red fruits. So you've got red currant, you've even got cranberry, you've got Loganberries, you've got some really bright, juicy fruits that when you bite into them, they make the juices run, and they're really delicious. They're really, really tasty. They're not going to make old bones, but frankly, they are so beautiful that they will drink happily. And we tasted a couple here last night, and they will drink easily in the next 2-3 years. They'll start drinking. They will drink through for another, depending on the level, up to another 5-10 years. So they're not 20-year wines, but frankly, do we want to wait 20 years? And they're absolutely delicious. So the quality is really good. And to compare with, say, previous vintages, they will be lasting longer. And they are much more, as I said, on the black fruit. So they're these are the 2021 reds you would drink before your 19 and 20s.
It was really interesting to taste them last night. We had an 18, some 20s and 21, and the 18 was really, rich and black and dark fruited, and the 21s were just so fresh and bright, and there's a reason for both. That's the whole reason for vintage change, and it's lovely to have the contrast in the cellar, which is fun to drink and fun to explore. But the lovely thing about these reds is you're not going to have to wait for ages for them to come around.
That is the joy about Burgundy, because unlike the New World area where they have a very consistent weather all the time, Burgundy is still marginal. Despite climate change, it is still marginal. It still gets extreme weather. It still has difficult vintages, which means that each wine has its own characteristic. And actually 2021, the one thing that really stood out in 2021 was all the individual vineyards really tasted different. So you go to somebody who's got, say, like Axel Machado de Grammont, she has 4 different Nuits Saint-Georges. They're all relatively close to each other on the hill, but this year they couldn't have been more different. And that to me is what's so exciting, tasting the same grower, essentially the same conditions, different soils, which is why they're in different clima, but wines which are just so markedly different. And that for me is the joy of Burgundy.
Brilliant. And thinking about quantity, which I guess also ties in with why we should buy En Primeur. Tell us about the quantities for 2021.
Dismal is really the best way of putting some of the whites. And people like the Matro sisters, who you've all met doing one of our Zooms, they lost around 75% overall, lost 80 to 85% in some of their vineyards of their whites. That's massive. And if you can only produce 15% of your normal harvest, it's a massive impact. And they normally have a decent volume of Bourgogne Blanc to the extent that we buy hundreds of cases. This year we are not getting hundreds of cases. I think we're getting half 100 cases, which is not going to last very long. So quantities on the whites are definitely down. Reds, Pinot Noir didn't get frosted as badly, so that's not as desperate, particularly in the Côte de Nuit, which is the northern part of Burgundy, because Pinot Noir is a later budder, and the frost was less severe in the northern part, for reasons that I'm not entirely clear about, because Chablis was hit hard, Côte de Nuit wasn't, and the Côte de Beaune was. But so Pinot Noirs, the reds are slightly less restricted. But again, they all suffer from the same bad weather. So they still suffer with mildew, they still suffer with rot at harvest. So they are reduced. So yields
reduced because they had to make such a selection, and they only chose the best fruit to put into
exactly that. It's in our favour. It's all in our favour, or in your favour. And the yields are definitely down, volumes are down, which, as Laura says, this leads on to why you buy En Primeur. The biggest reason to buy En Primeur is to have access to the stock, is to get the wine you want. The nature of Burgundy is these guys have got half a hectare or a hectare of each vineyard, which at the best will in the world, they're not producing hundreds of cases. And they are producing potentially hundreds of cases, but it's not tens of hundreds. And this year, I was just looking at one of our growers, he produced 200 hectolitres. That's 2,000 litres.
And this goes across all levels, really, doesn't it? So if you like, for example, J.J. Vincent's, Bourgogne Blanc, there isn't very much of it around. So this is the year to sort of perhaps think about laying some wine down or buying at this stage.
To drink in 2-3 years' time, exactly.
But the other reasons for buying En Primeur are for, not only to get the stock now and to be able to drink Burgundy in the future at this stage, but also to buy it at the best price. So when it comes in, there's a sort of on average, we're looking at a sort of increase of 20%, so on
15 to 20%, depending on the wine.
So this is the best price to buy your wine at. And if you haven't got room at home to store it, you can store it with us as well. The cost is minimal. So if you think you're going to be adding 15 to 20% if you buy it when it comes here, it's only going to cost you £1 a bottle to store it with us throughout the year. So you can take delivery whenever you want. And actually, it's a really good way of just building up a reserve. So then you have wines to drink that you've already paid for. And all you're going to pay when you have delivery is the duty and VAT payment. So it's a good way of spreading your costs. It's a good way of building up a cellar. It's also a great way of gifting, thinking about probably not godchildren in this vintage, because they're not going to be long, maybe wines. But
no, well, I give that this sort of wine is something I give to my godchildren, because I don't have, thankfully, many baby godchildren, but I do have sort of 16, 17-year-olds and a couple of 20-year-olds. So actually it's quite nice to give them something which they're not expecting, because it's come from me and because it's put in their reserve. They don't dare open it straight away. But I can then also say that you can open it in a couple of years' time, and that does work. So it does work.
Yes,
not as long
saving up for an 18th or a 21st present. That's also quite a good thing to give that's in the bank for the future. And you can deploy it when they turn 18 or 21.
But you can still stop them drinking it too quickly.
Exactly.
By not letting it out of reserve.
So when our offer comes out, Nicola, it is full. There are almost 150 tasting notes which refer to Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, which can be quite confusing. It's a lot of wine. So we divided up into growers, a lot of whom you've met or heard of in our tastings. And so perhaps you could give us some top tips to help us navigate the offer.
Yes, well, needless to say, if we didn't like the wines, they wouldn't be on there. So it's a bit like asking me which is my favourite child, which obviously I'm not going to tell you. So my top growers for this year, as ever, I'm absolutely besotted with the wines of Romain Poirot at Vaudoisy. I think they're superb. And he and his brother are making some really exciting wines. His Bourgogne Blanc, and really basic Bourgogne Blanc, is spectacular and really, really good value for money. He's probably the only person who didn't move his prices up last year or this, which is spectacularly good for us. So he's got Bourgogne Blanc, he's got a Volnay, and he's got a Pommard, which is delicious as well. Matro, the Matro sisters, broken record. I love their wines and their reds, and they are such good red winemakers. I dread to say they're actually much better than their father was. So their whites and their reds, all of them are brilliant. And
while we're talking about Matro, we should mention a glass of our growers.
Yes, you should definitely.
So we've got the Matro girls joining us they're going to be joining our colleague Letty, who you've met on Women in Wine Zooms, for a chat about the Burgundy vintage and to taste 3 wines. So we'll send you a link to that in our next newsletter with the next case.
Yes, their wines, but any of their reds, any of their whites. In the Premier Cru Merceaux and Pulinis, we have 6 bottles here and 12 bottles there. So don't look at those. Just look at the village wines, the Saint Romain, the Bourgogne Blanc, and their Merceau red and their Marange. And they're just really beautiful. Baptiste Guillot, he's in Beaune. He makes an amazing wine called Clos de Fulot, and it really is a clos right behind his house at the bottom of the hill. And amazingly, because it's walled, he didn't get frosted in it. He's got 0.75 of a hectare of white. It is superb. And
please buy that as my top tip too.
Yeah, it's a brilliant wine. Jean-Michel Chartrand in Puligny-Montrachet. Again, his Puligny's, he's made an extra effort on extra wine for us, which is great. I spent a lot of time working on him to get some allocations, so we got some extra Premier Cru, which is almost unheard of this year. But he's got an amazing Haute Côte de Beaune, which we've not listed before, and just delicious, and is where it tastes like a Puligny, which is not surprising. Machard de Grammont, you've met Axel in a tasting before. Her reds are superb. They're really succulent and juicy, and they're amazing. And somewhere, I think on the offer, we got a picture of Axel almost falling into a tiny stainless steel tank, because it was so far down in the tank to get the wine. That's one whole vat of the whole thing. Domaine de Lalo, another girl grower, Geraldine Godot, making superb wines. And again, a couple of their vineyards, they had a bigger harvest this year than they did in 2020 because of the drought. So there's some possibility of length there. But their whites, which Laura's favourite whites, sadly, are history. I think we've got 3 cases.
Well, they blended them all into one cuvee.
We've got 3 cases, and it's tiny, but the wines are superb. So Laura better get shopping early. And then finally, also Trucheté, who are just across the road from Arlo, who have we done a tasting with Pauline yet? I think we should do.
She has been to one of our tastings, but we should definitely.
It's a brother and sister team, Morgan and Julie Trucheté, and Morgan's partner, Pauline. So it's quite girl powery. And Pauline is actually, she's terrifying. If I don't reply to an email within about 30 seconds, it gets chased up. And she's seriously on it, and they're making some really, really interesting wines. and they've got some great wines, some Haute Côte de Nuit, sorry, wines, which are really well priced and making some interesting stuff there.
Yeah.
So those are my top tips. Personally, I will be buying some Vaudoisie. I will obviously be buying some Matrix. I think I've bought it every year for about the last 30. And I don't know what else I'm going to buy yet. I think I'm probably going to have to wait till you guys have been shopping.
I'm definitely, if I can, buy some Guillot, the Baptiste Guillot
Yes.
Clos du Fouleau. I don't think I'll be allowed to buy the Arlo if we only have 3 cases. So someone should jump in there quickly. Perhaps we can share it. Anyway, we promised that we would keep this to 15 minutes, so we didn't delay anybody throughout their day. So thank you so much for listening. We're really looking forward to seeing you at our Women in Wine events. We've got tastings, we've got Zooms, we've got in-person, on-screen events. And we'll send you a newsletter soon with dates for the next case, which will be Burgundy, and also, because it's so scarce, alternatives to Burgundy.